Hello, friends. Welcome back to Out of Patience. In the world of science, where logic is sacred and chaos is in charge, things fall apart for reasons no one writes down. When ambition collides with bureaucracy, when brilliance hits a budget ceiling, when the system tells you to quit, one guy stays behind to take notes. So when the bench goes sideways, we send in Oliver Bogler. Here is the latest dispatch from Standard Deviation. Take it away, Oliver.
Embarking on any career requires confidence that the investment in the required learning and training will pay off. To get a good job in science takes around 15 years of education, a bachelor's degree, a doctorate, and then a postdoc. For my generation, you could have confidence in there being a path and a job at the end. But the people making their way in this field right now have different experiences.
It's just kind of weird how, you're kind of just cycling between one hugely chaotic experience in your life to another.
For Dr. Rachel Gatlin and her peers, turmoil is something they first saw when they were still kids.
I think my generation is just kind of interesting because we've kind of been through this before, where it's there's a recession and there's kind of this chaos happening.
I'm Dr. Oliver Bogler, a cancer biologist supporting scientists and telling their stories. Rachel's path into science started early.
Yeah, I just kind of grew up liking asking questions, I guess being a little bit nosy, wanting to know why and how stuff worked. Both my parents at one point worked in healthcare.
In high school, Rachel encountered the work of Eric Nestler, who studies the molecular basis of mental health conditions. He had found that addiction can make a mark on the genome that is inherited.
I just thought that was absolutely fascinating, and how those experiences could be passed down genetically or through behavior.
She studied behavioral neuroscience and chemistry as an undergraduate and committed to graduate school. That is when things got chaotic again.
I started my PhD in neuroscience at the University of Utah in 2019, so right before COVID hit. Little did we know.
The lab she joined was brand new and still getting set up, and her advisor was on maternity leave, which would have been challenging enough, even without a pandemic.
So it was an interesting start to grad school. So I joined the lab in March 2020, and then I couldn't do my first experiment until June, just because of all the restrictions of people being able to go in and out of lab and whether or not we had any animals and all that.
Rachel had picked a project that was almost prophetic in its focus.
I started doing a project on social isolation, and I just thought that was a really interesting type of stress to study, because at the time, before COVID, it wasn't that common of a stressor to study. Now it's a bit more established.
An understatement. She was asking how the stress of loneliness affected the brain.
I love connecting these molecules and these cells in the brain to these big outward behaviors we can see. Some even with our own bare eyes. You don't even have to do any sort of nuanced scoring. You just see, wow, these isolated mice will attack another mouse, and the group house mice almost never do.
As the pandemic arrived with its new rules and regulations, Rachel couldn't help but see the parallels.
It was a little sad during COVID. I was like, wow, I kind of know what these mice are going through.
For a year, there were all kinds of new limitations. Lab access was restricted, experiments were slow because of staffing issues, and they didn't always have the gear they needed.
We're part of a school of medicine as well on this campus. Our lab, like many labs, donated our PPE, so gloves, glasses. We had N95 masks for virus work we do, so we had donated all of that.
Rachel found herself struggling to learn the new, sophisticated techniques she needed for her work.
Knowledge transfer from the PI to us, first students and first lab manager did make it harder.
The lab made the best of it, creative scheduling so everyone could do some work, and frequent video calls. But it was slow, stressful, and frustrating.
I don't know if I could go back. I don't know that I'd want to have that experience again. I might have chosen something else for my thesis project.
After a year, things were more or less back to normal, and Rachel got going on her work. Little did she know that COVID would not be the hardest part of her graduate school experience.
The best parts were just having really wonderful lab mates and being in a grad program where it overall felt pretty supportive, and I, made really good friends.
A few years later, in the last few months of her PhD, Rachel had two main goals. The first was to publish her work. It had gone well, and she was preparing a first author paper, signaling that this was primarily her data.
It's just now under review because it's a big paper. My PI was really shooting for the moon with this, which is great.
She had uncovered how the prefrontal cortex uses a balance of two signals to exert control over distinct phases of aggression in socially isolated mice. Her work was scientifically interesting and could also have long-term applications for mental health care. Her second goal was to line up her next position. Because this can take a long time, Rachel, like most grad students, had started months earlier, scouring LinkedIn and university websites.
The normal sent out 1 million applications, only heard back from a few, as it goes with any field. But yeah, I ultimately decided on doing a postdoc at University of Washington.
She found this position through her network, applied, and was selected, even before she had completed her PhD. Imagine the relief, the pride, the sense of accomplishment after all those years of hard work that started in the chaos of COVID. Rachel was excited, and it was something of a homecoming. She had spent part of her childhood in Washington and had family and friends there. A few days after she had defended her PhD, Rachel, now Dr. Gatlin, had a meeting with the Seattle lab that she would soon be joining for her postdoc.
It wasn't really an interview, I guess, a chat with them about my project, because I was like, oh, cool, we're going to talk about start dates, hiring paperwork, all that stuff. And they're like, oh, actually, there's a hiring freeze.
Rachel, like so many, was caught up in an almost universal hiring freeze brought on by devastating changes the Trump administration was planning for the way science is supported in the U.S.
I was just kind of panicking, but I was still on Zoom with my not yet confirmed postdoc PI. So had to kind of keep a smile on my face and be like, yeah, totally, it'll be fine.
This was a complete derailment of her immediate future. She had made all the plans.
And it was nope, never mind.
After the call, Rachel allowed her emotions to surface.
I don't know if I called or I texted my mom to tell her, because I was I might have just texted her because I didn't want to call, because I was I'm going to start crying.
But her prospective mentor in Seattle soon reached out with a glimmer of hope. The University of Washington was willing to hire Rachel if she was accepted into a program funded by an NIH training grant. So, exhausted as she was, Rachel threw herself into writing a proposal and navigating the labyrinthine competitive world of grant applications. She didn't have much time. Her new project was in a different field, neuronal circuits and neurodegeneration, and that meant reading a lot of new papers. At the same time, she was still wrapping up her graduate work.
So that was probably the most stressful period of time, because I didn't know where or when I was going to have a job.
Rachel got her training grant application in, and then she waited and waited. Later, she learned the reason it had dragged on for weeks. The world of science was so unsettled by the arbitrary way that grants were being deleted that the University of Washington was waiting to make sure Rachel's training grant would still be honored by NIH.
I was kind of just taking it one day at a time, which is hard for me. I tend to think ahead far too much than is probably reasonable or maybe helpful for myself.
Then in August, Rachel got good news.
Maybe I was fixing some slides that I needed to look at for staining, but then I got the email that I got the T32, and I was like, yay, I got the T32. I'm free from the unknown.
Rachel is moving on, having survived another chaotic episode. But she has no illusions about this last one.
Science used to be this thing where people would be like, no, you'll get a job, you'll make money. But now, it's like, will you? Like, should you do a PhD in a especially biological sciences field? Like, I don't know. It's hard. It's scary because it's more of a gamble than it used to be.
And so, as she transitions to Seattle for her postdoc, she is also strategizing about her future.
So just trying to, take advantage of like the networking in Seattle, because University of Washington is huge and there's also a lot of companies there. I think thinking more broadly and kind of like opening myself up to different possibilities that maybe before all this chaos I hadn't really thought about.
Rachel also has some advice for people facing chaos.
It sounds silly, but like, get a cat sooner. I mean, I got a cat kind of with the intention of like her being an emotional support animal.
When life throws chaos at you again and again, what is the answer?
Sometimes it's a cute little fuzzy cat named Yoshi.
This is Oliver Bogler with Standard Deviation on the Out of Patience Podcast Network.